I want to welcome all of you here this morning. It's great to be with you. For those of you that are new or visiting for the first time, my name is Mac, and I'm one of the pastors on our team. Also want to welcome all of you who are joining us from home. Thanks for tuning in. So we recently started a brand new series where we're going through the book of James, and we're calling it A Faith That Works. A faith that works, and there's sort of a double meaning here because the kind of faith that James invites us into throughout this book is a faith that actually does work. In other words, it goes beyond just believing certain things to actually doing things. You live it out. So it's a faith that does work, but it's also a faith that actually does good work in your life. The kind of faith that James describes in this book will give you meaning and purpose as you follow Jesus and live out the way of Jesus in your everyday life. And I'm telling you, this book is just packed with practical insight on how to follow Jesus in your life. It's one of the earliest, if not the earliest, writings we have in all of the New Testament, dating back to the early 40s, just 10 years after Jesus rose from the dead, written by Jesus' half-brother James, who had, kind of a first-hand look at all of Jesus' life, which comes out in the way he writes and how he talks about Jesus, and it intersects with a lot of what we're facing in our culture today. It's a deeply practical book, and I couldn't be more excited to journey through it with you. So, we spent the last couple weeks talking about who James is, who he's writing to. Today, we're actually going to dig into some of the content in this letter. But I want to back into today by telling you about our family dinners. All right, one of the things we kind of put a high priority on in our family is having family dinners every night. And to kind of mix things up and get us talking as a family, most nights we bring a question for discussion. And it's hard to come up with like a new, fun, clever question every night. And so there's certain questions we sort of default back to. And one of them is highs and lows. So at least a few times throughout the week, we're simply going, hey, what was your high for today? What was your low? We've even tried to make that exciting, like what was your rose? What was your thorn? What was your peak? What was your valley? Just to kind of throw a curveball. But most nights out of the week, barring a practice, we're going over like a family question to talk together and to be with one another. And we most often kind of return to this question of what was your high and what was your low. And having done this for several years, I've noticed a pattern in my life. And it's simply this, that it's way easier for me to identify my low from the day than it is my high. Like, when it comes to my turn, it takes me zero time at all to identify my low. Something that went wrong, something that didn't go according to my plan, a relational interaction that went sideways, some unresolved problem. It takes me no time to be able to name my low, but when it comes to naming my high, well, then I actually need to reflect. I need to ponder, and I really need to think about it a little bit. And so there's this kind of like this thing that's been revealed to me in practicing this question regularly, which is I'm drawn towards noticing the things that are wrong way more so than noticing the things that are good and right. And it turns out it's not just me, it's all of us. So neuroscience has actually shown this to be true. Psychologists call this negativity bias. And we all struggle with this. It turns out our brains actually respond stronger to negative input than positive input. So when something goes wrong, think of it this way. Your brain basically lights up like a Christmas tree, but if something happens that's good, it responds like a little bitty nightlight. Okay? And the theory is, like, why is that? Well, the theory is it's part of our, survival instinct. In order to survive, you need to be aware of dangers and threats and so on. And so your brain's kind of constantly on alert for things that could go wrong so that you can survive, which is great if you're on the TV show alone surrounded by bears, But it's not so great if you're just going about your ordinary life, with this hypersensitivity to everything that's negative all the time. We have this bent towards the negative, towards noticing the problems and that things are difficult. Now, I'm just going to name what's true about me. When I identify a low in my life, something that's not going according to my plan or something that's not easy but rather is difficult and hard, for the most part, my posture is, how do I get this thing to go away? I just want it to go away. How do I solve this? How do I fix this? Because I'd rather not deal with the stress and strain of having to face this thing on a regular, ongoing basis. Anybody else there? How can I fix this? How can we get past this so I don't have to deal with it anymore? And so my general posture when there's a low is I'm kind of annoyed and irritated. And I resent that I even have to deal with this in the first place. And what I'm noticing about this is this actually makes it so much worse. Because now I'm not only dealing with the negative thing, this problem, but I'm also dealing with my problematic response to that problem. I've got this low, but now I've got to deal with my low type response, my irritation, my anger, my frustration towards this low in the first place. Is this making sense? And so it's just fascinating how God works, because in the process of putting this message together, I felt God hitting me upside the head in the best, metaphorically. He didn't really slap me in the face, but it was like, wow, he's bringing some conviction here about how I'm relating to the ongoing struggles and challenges that we all inevitably face in our lives. Rather than being annoyed and irritated and frustrated, I've sensed God working as I've been putting this message together to have a much more welcoming and even inviting and positive posture towards the challenges and the struggles in my life. And you might be going, well, why is that? And today I want to explain why this is so important. So here's our big idea for today. Our bottom line, if there's one thing you walk away with, let it be this: that trials can be leveraged for spiritual profit. Trials can be leveraged for spiritual profit. In other words, the challenges in our lives can be a catalyst for spiritual growth, depending on how we respond. Trials test our faith. That's what they do. They test our faith. And when we choose joy, not irritation, not frustration, not anger, not annoyance, but joy, what can produce a perseverance that leads to spiritual growth and transformation. When we face the trials in our lives with joy-filled faith and fortitude, it can produce spiritual maturity. It can help you become more like the person of Jesus in your life. And this is why we shouldn't just push them away or wish them away or try to fix them right away. We should lean in with a welcoming, positive posture, knowing that they contain an opportunity to become more like Jesus. So I want to read this passage to you. It's a dense passage. There's a lot to it. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle in some commentary as I go. But today we're looking at James 1, 2 through 4. Here's what it says. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Let's stop there. This phrase, consider it pure joy, I want you to notice that consider is a thinking word. All right? It's not a feeling word, it's a thinking word. So James isn't telling us to feel joy when we're facing various trials. He's telling us this is how you should think about it. This is how you should conceptualize it. I want you to consider it pure joy. Now this phrase, pure joy, it literally means all joy. Pure, undiluted joy. Joy that isn't mixed with anything else. Undiluted, pure joy. You're going to consider it pure joy. And then notice this phrase, my brothers and sisters. I love this because James doesn't preach at this congregation. He stands in solidarity with them. These are his brothers and sisters. He's going to repeat that phrase, brothers and sisters, 15 times throughout the course of his letter. What you see, just pay attention. James is also shepherding this congregation. He's calibrating these commands with compassion, something that he learned how to do from Jesus himself. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. That word face there literally means fall into. When you fall into various trials of many kinds, the idea is this isn't something you're choosing. This is something that's happening to you. You're falling into these things. And when you do, I want you to choose pure joy, all joy. And here's why. Verse 3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. The word know there in Greek, it's epiginosko, and it's not intellectual knowing. It's not, I know this to be true in my mind. It's experiential knowing. You know this to be true because you've already experienced this. You're going to consider it pure joy because you've already experienced this to be true. You know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Also translated endurance. And this is an interesting word in Greek because it literally carries the picture of someone carrying a heavy load over an extended period of time. Someone who has like a huge weight on their back, but they're learning to carry it further and further. And the idea is when you lean into tests, it makes you stronger. No pain, no gain, as they say. And then let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. We miss out on so much in the English because in the Greek, James has tons of these alliterations. And so the Greek literally says, let perseverance perfect its work so that you can be perfect. Let perseverance perfect its work so that you can be perfect. And of course, throughout the Bible, this idea of perfection or being mature and complete finds its full definition in Jesus. So what he's saying is that you'll become more like Christ. You'll become Christ-like, which can't happen if you don't persevere. If you quit prematurely, you'll remain immature. If you quit something prematurely, well, you're not going to be fully mature. So you've got to persevere and let perseverance finish its work so you can grab a hold of becoming more like Jesus. Amen? All right, well, let's dive into this passage. 3 points for you today. Number one is that we will face trials in this life. We will face trials in this life. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Notice the word whenever, right? So it's not an if, it's a when. Whenever you face trials of many kinds. And notice the of many kinds. In other words, the trials you're going to experience in life are going to come in all shapes and sizes. And the implication is also that there's never going to be a time in your life where this isn't the case. From start to finish, you're going to face trials of many kinds, of all shapes and sizes. There will never be a season in your life where you're going to be completely trial or challenge free. And I want us to notice this right away, that this challenges the way some people are invited to follow Jesus. Many people, when they're first invited to follow Jesus, are sort of presented with this Jesus that primarily exists to make their life easier. It's this happy, clappy type faith where if you follow Jesus, he's going to make your life easier. You're going to have nonstop miracles and blessings, and it's going to be amazing. There's actually an entire movement built around this type of an invitation to follow Jesus known as the prosperity gospel. And they go so far as to say when you follow Jesus, he's going to bless you with physical well-being. You'll never have any physical illness. And he's going to bless you with financial resources. He's going to make your life spectacular. A friend was recently shopping, and they sent me a picture while they were shopping of this product you can actually buy by a famous preacher. I'm not going to name his name, but it's like this technology cube. And he's kind of in the prosperity thing. And so the idea is you push a button and some of his most famous preaching lines will speak to you. And it's things like declare favor and, position yourself for prosperity and you are enough and things like this. So the idea is when you have a down moment, you buy this cube and then you push a button and it's like, I am enough. Oh, I'm going to, just declare favor over the situation, right? And I'm not, if you happen to see this product, I'm not entirely down on this guy. I think he's done a ton of good. But I fundamentally question the type of faith that he's inviting people to embrace. This idea that when you follow Jesus, you're going to kind of have a problem-free life where you can expect instant fixes to the problems you're facing and nonstop miracles. Is he going to kind of give you this abundant blessing where you live this charmed life of affluence, right? This type of an invitation to follow Jesus, I think, sets people up for failure. And the reason why is because when you begin to face trials and challenges, which are inevitable whenever you face trials of many kinds, what ends up happening is these types of people have been invited to follow Jesus in this way, do one of two things. They either are in a whole bunch of confusion and despair. Why in the world is this happening to me? I must have done something wrong. Why is God punishing me? So they either land there, like, why is God doing this to me? Or they honestly minimize the trial altogether and pretend it doesn't even exist. I know people have literally died of cancer, assuming they didn't have cancer because there's no way they could have it. Is this making sense? This is not the type of faith that Jesus invites us into. Some sort of a charmed life where we never have problems or challenges. Jesus does not exist to make your life easier. He doesn't. Now, he'll make your life better, but better and easier are not exactly the same thing. In fact, Jesus himself promises you this. In John 16:33, he says, in this world, you will have what? Trouble. You're going to have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. It's been said that when you follow Jesus, God promises you four things: peace, power, purpose, and trouble. 3 P's and a T. Peace, power, purpose, and trouble. There's this famous writer, M. Scott Peck, wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled, like super famous book. The very first sentence in this book, does anybody know what it is? Life is difficult. That's how he starts his book. Life is difficult. Life is hard. Life is full of challenges. And there's no way you're going to escape this reality. If you're going to take on the task of living, you're going to experience hard things. And my point is that we should actually begin to expect this. Our expectations set us up for success or failure. And I'm telling you, you should expect that you're going to experience difficult, challenging trials in your life. Imagine, for instance, that you went running. Okay, for some of you, this might be totally hypothetical, okay? But imagine you went out on a run and you're like, I'm going to run a 5K, 3.1 miles. And so you're out running your 5K. Bill, imagine you're out running this 5K. You're just, people are waving at you. Go, Bill. And right around 2.5 miles, someone stops you and is like, hey, it's actually not a 5K, it's a marathon. You got 26.2 miles to run. What would most of us do? I'm not running that, and you'd quit, right? Why? Because the gap between what you were expecting you were going to do and what's being asked of you to do is totally different. So you'd throw in the towel. Now imagine, Bill, and just go with me here. Imagine you were out to run a marathon. And around 2.5 miles, someone said, hey, got good news for you. It's just a 5K today. Right? Because you expected to have to do this amount of work, but it ends up just being this amount of work. Notice how powerful your expectations are in that moment. What you expect sort of sets you up for success or failure. So I'm going to tell you what God's been doing in my life as I've been preparing this message, as he's been showing me some faulty expectations I've had. That very much has been shaping the way I've been relating to both the big and small challenges that I'm experiencing in life. See, it's no secret we've had like some difficult moments as a church community in the last 5 or 10 years, right? And I'll tell you, one of the ways I kind of internalized that was like, haven't I kind of met my challenge quota for life? You know what I mean? Like, I kind of deserve to have like a series of years here where it's just kind of like smooth sailing, right? And unbeknownst to me, without even like on the subconscious level, I had built this expectation that I should kind of have like, I've filled my challenge quota. I deserve something better. And all of a sudden, God's kind of showing me like, who gave you that impression? Like, when did you think the challenges were just going to stop? Like, what gave you the impression that that was going to happen? And at one point, you could be like, well, that's disappointing. But on the other hand, it's been totally freeing because now I'm like, hey, I wake up, I'm like, what low moment's going to happen today? Of course they're going to happen. It changes my expectation, and it's changing the way that I relate to the difficult things. Rather than being annoyed and irritated and frustrated, I just find like, yeah, these are going to happen. And I'm ready for them, rather than just resenting them. Here's point number 2. We can choose to face trials with joy-filled faith. This is the turning point. They're going to happen, but we can choose to face trials with joy-filled faith. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Consider it pure joy, all joy. And again, this is a choice-based word. You can choose this. There's a guy named Tim Hansel who has lived his life with chronic pain. Chronic pain. And anybody experienced chronic pain before? It can really wear you down. It can really wear you down. And so he's written a lot about this power of choosing joy in your everyday life, even when circumstances are hard and difficult. He wrote a book called Holy Sweat and You Gotta Keep Dancing that are just fantastic. Here's what he says. At any moment, we can choose joy or something else. At any moment in your life, you can choose joy or you can choose something else. Pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. We cannot avoid pain, but notice what you can avoid. You can avoid joy. Nothing will affect your ability to live out life to the fullest as much as your inner commitment to joy. You can choose joy no matter what you're experiencing in life. Now, I want to name this again. This phrase, consider it pure joy, it's a thinking word, it's not a feeling word. So James isn't telling us that we should feel joy when we're facing various trials of many kinds. He's not telling us how we should feel, right? He's telling us what we should think. This is a choice-based command. You got to choose joy when you're falling into various trials. Other thing I want us to notice is that he's not telling us to be thankful for the trials and challenges we're facing. He's not telling us to feel joy, but he's also not telling us to be thankful for those trials. Like imagine for a second you lose everything. You lose your spouse. You lose your kids. Your house burns down. You lose your job. You got nothing. Imagine you're Job for an instance. James isn't saying, hey, feel joy and be thankful that all this stuff has happened. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you can choose joy in the trial. You don't have to be thankful for the trial, but you can choose joy in the trial. What I'm driving at is that joy isn't conditioned upon our circumstances. So many of us have a circumstantial view of joy, where we can have joy so long as the conditions are right. As long as I'm having nonstop highs, nothing but peaks, well, then I can have joy. But the moment I'm experiencing a low or a series of lows or a challenge or a struggle, well, then I can't have joy. I have to wait till that trial or struggle is over. And see, that's not what James is teaching here. Not a circumstantial view of joy, but something you can step into and embrace at any moment in time. So many of us have an as soon as view of joy. As soon as this problem goes away, as soon as this struggle goes away, well, then I can have joy. As soon as my marriage improves, well, then I can have joy. As soon as my kids start behaving, as soon as I get the job promotion, as soon as I get my finances figured out, as soon as the cancer goes away, well, then I can have joy. But that's not what James is teaching. True joy is a choice. It doesn't depend upon our circumstances. It depends on how we relate to our circumstances, how we respond to the things that are happening in our life. Joy isn't something to be determined by your life circumstances. It's something you can choose no matter what your life circumstances are. So much of life is not about what happens to you, which is largely out of your control. It's about how you respond to what's happening to you, and you can choose joy. Now, I've spent a lot of time, perhaps being a little bit of, redundant, explaining you're going to experience trials, and when you experience trials, you can choose what? Joy. I've been intentionally redundant because here's why. When you choose joy in the middle of a trial, it sets off this chain reaction. It's like this domino effect that can lead to incredible breakthrough in your life. And so here's point number 3 today. Facing trials with joy-filled faith leads to spiritual gains. When you choose joy in the middle of trial, it can lead to spiritual gains. Here's why. Verse 3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces what? Perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. We choose joy in trials because we know that when we do, it leads to perseverance, and that perseverance isn't the end, but it's the means to becoming more like Jesus. This is why we choose joy in the middle of a trial, because when we do, this perseverance takes over that leads to spiritual growth and maturity. So the key here is when you're facing something difficult, a trial, a challenge, a struggle, you're not just looking at that trial, struggle, or challenge. You're actually looking through that trial or challenge or struggle to the spiritual growth that's waiting for you on the other side. Are you following this? If you just look at the struggle, man, you're going to get consumed and overwhelmed. But if you see through the struggle to the potential of spiritual growth waiting for you, if you persevere with joy, man, that's what will get you through. You got to see through the trial. We choose joy in trials because we know that every trial holds kingdom potential. Every single trial, every single challenge holds this potential for you to become more like Jesus, depending upon how you relate to it. This is why trials are a gift. Not every trial is sent by God. This world's broken. So you're going to experience all kinds of trials and struggles because we're in a broken world. But God will meet you in every single one. And when he does, and you lean in, it produces growth. Trials test our faith, and when we lean in with faith, man, our faith grows. I was having lunch with an elder a couple weeks ago. We were just talking about what's going on in our life, just hanging out, and he was explaining some really difficult stuff that's happening in his life, stuff full of uncertainty and challenges, and I don't know what's going to happen here or there, and I'm really being stretched. And all of a sudden, after explaining all this stuff, all this uncertainty, all this stress, he said, you know what, but I'm so grateful because it's strengthening my faith. I'm learning to depend God more than I did yesterday. I'm learning to trust God more than I did last year. This is doing good work. And I thought, man, that's it. That's what tests and trials do. They make us stronger, but they only make us stronger when we persevere. It's a little bit like working out. You know, if you want to get in shape, the way that you work out, you literally tear the fibers in your muscles. You stretch your muscles to the point of breaking, and then they grow back stronger when you give them time to rest and recover. And you do that over and over and over again. Break the muscles, tear the muscles, let them recover, build back stronger, and eventually you start looking different, and your body composition changes, and you become stronger. This is what happens with trials. We welcome trial after trial. We persevere with joy-filled faith, and it tears things down and rebuilds things on the foundation of Jesus Christ. Is this making sense? But it can't happen without perseverance, a perseverance that leads to maturity. My wife and I, we coach CrossFit in our community, and we've been doing it for several years now. And one of the things I love about CrossFit is that it's hard. It's designed to make people want to quit. Not joking. Having done these high-intensity workouts for many years and watching other people do these high-intensity workouts, I've noticed a pattern, and it's in every single workout that happens. It's called the wall. I call it the wall. And it happens not quite at the halfway mark of the workout, but like 1/3 of the way into the workout, people hit this wall, and you can see it on their face. It's like this stuck moment when the pain of what they're experiencing, this physical discomfort, crosses over with this realization that they have so far to go before this workout is even going to be over. So you got this pain threshold that's all of a sudden hitting this realization, I'm not even halfway done, and that's when doubt starts to creep in. You can see it in their face. Can I keep going? How am I going to finish this? I really want to be done. And I love it because one of the things this moment does again and again is it shows people's character under stress. What are you going to do? Are you going to quit? That's an option. You could quit. Are you going to cheat? You could skip around and finish earlier, or are you going to persevere? Are you going to push past this pain? Are you going to keep putting one foot in front of the other? Are you going to keep going? And so I'm just going to confess to you that one of the reasons I'm committed to exercise, like high intensity exercise, is on a regular basis, multiple times a week, I'm putting myself in that position where I have to decide, what am I going to do under stress when I really want to stop? And you build that resilience and that perseverance muscle that translates into other areas of life. So that when you want to quit this other thing that God's calling you to be faithful to, you got this memory bank of, hey, but I didn't quit then and I was able to do it. I kept going and God saw me through. Is this making sense? Perseverance is essential to following Jesus, because without it, you'll never grab a hold of the maturity that's waiting for you on the other side. Now, maybe you're thinking, I'm sick of all these workout metaphors. That's not really my thing. Mac, what else you got? Here's a quote for you. The difficulties of life are intended by God to refine our faith, heating it in the crucible of suffering so that impurities might be refined away so that it might become pure and valuable before the Lord. The testing of faith here then is not intended to determine whether a person has faith or not. It's intended to purify the faith that already exists. In other words, your faith is like gold. And the way they purify gold is they heat it up. They put it through a lot of stress and strain, and those impurities fall away, and you're left with something more pure and complete. And it's the same thing here. Trials and struggles and challenges, they heat up the conditions of our life so that all the other things that don't belong can be stripped away, and we can look more like Jesus. What James is describing in this passage is what psychologists now call post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth. This idea that there's positive change that can occur when someone perseveres through adversity or challenge that results in a higher level of functioning. James is like 2,000 years ahead of our psychologists, naming here's how it works. It works when you consider it pure joy when you're in the middle of a trial, knowing that you will grab a hold of perseverance and it will eventually lead to maturity and completeness. Friends, I wouldn't be here standing in front of you today without this specific passage. 20 years ago, right around this time, I experienced one of the most difficult challenges I had been through, at least at that point. 20 years ago, my identity as a person was less about following Jesus, although I knew him, and it was more about a sport. My identity was hockey, and I was a goalie, and I also thought it was my future. My number one goal was to play Division I hockey. And then I learned about politics in a painful way. I was cut from my high school team my senior year after playing on this team for 2 years. And it was difficult. And I remember that the night it happened, my youth pastor called me. And we talked for a while, probably like a half an hour. I don't remember anything that he said, but I do remember this. At one point, he asked me to get out my Bible. And he said, I want you to turn to James chapter 1. And I did. And he read these verses 2 through 4 to me. And he said, Mac, you better commit these to memory because you're in the middle of a trial right now. And you have a choice to make. You can focus on your character and the work God wants to do in you, or you can choose something else. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance perfect its work in you so that you can be perfect, complete, and mature, not lacking anything. Here's your homework as we leave today. I want you to identify a trial you are facing right now in your life. Again, given our negativity bias, this should not be difficult to identify something difficult you're facing in your life. How have you related to this trial in your life so far? Are you choosing joy or something else? Just be honest with yourself. And then what would it look like for you to choose joy-filled faith? Allow God to speak into that for you. Yes? All right. Some of you might be experiencing trials or challenges right now, and you just need prayer. And so grab someone around you. We're a community. You don't need me to pray for you in order for it to be legit. Grab someone around you and let's pray. I'll be up here afterwards. I'm available to pray for you. Maybe you're sitting here today and you're going, well, I've got this trial, but I don't even know Jesus. Well, get to know him. We'd love to introduce you to what it means to follow Jesus in your everyday life. Don't forget to sign up for our DNA class or a small group as you leave today. And if you haven't filled out that survey, please do. We value your input. Let's stand for closing prayer. Jesus, we thank you that when we're facing trials and challenges and struggles in our life, you do not abandon us to figure it out on our own, but you're present to us in the middle of it. We confess that we can't navigate our way through the challenges and trials of many kinds without your presence and without your guidance and leadership in our life. Help us to choose joy. Help us to choose faith and trust in you. Help us to persevere so that we can grab a hold of the growth waiting for us on the other end of our trials, challenges, and struggles. We ask this in Jesus' name, and all God's people said, Amen. Go in love and go in peace.